Hey, remember a couple of episodes back I chatted with an award-winning financial planner who used to be an aquatic ecologist, then a policeman? Well, that career progression has just been topped by today's guest, who's gone from earning six figures as an aerospace engineer at Boeing to being a very successful Uber driver. Oh, and he's earning more than ever.
Well, I said, welcome to a small business marketing show, where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Timbo Reid.
And welcome back, listeners, to another episode of Australia's #1 marketing show. I'm your host, Timbo Reid. You, forever more importantly, you're a motivated business owner and you are ready to crank out some great marketing in order to build that beautiful business of yours into the empire it deserves to be. And what we do around here is shine a bright light on this very dark art they call marketing. So you've come to the right place if you find yourself a little bit in the dark. Hey, big show today. Got the rideshare guy. That's what he calls himself. His name is Harry Campbell. He is an Uber driver who now helps other Uber drivers build solid rideshare businesses. But very recently, he was an aeronautical engineer at Boeing. Yeah, more on Harry shortly. Got a book update. Got some big news about my speaking business. I just got a wonderful gig that I'm really excited by, excited to do, excited to tell you. A reminder later in the show about how you can get some exposure on this show for free for your business. You need to take it up. And a motivational quote to keep you on your toes. Hey, today's show, though, is lovingly brought to you by Net Registry. They care about one thing, right? Getting your marketing sorted online. Everything, domain names, hosting, web design, getting your website found. Do head over and check out their exclusive packages over at netregistry.com.au/Timbo. And also, we're made possible by this wonderful entrepreneurial program that I've done, and I reckon you should too. It's called Key Person of Influence. Wacky name, I know, but a really amazing program. If you want to be more visible, valued, and connected in your industry team, I would consider going to one of their upcoming live events, which I'll be attending. More on them later, but you can check them out at keypersonofinfluence.com/Timbo. Hey, as per usual, marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at Small Business Big Marketing's HQ. So let's get stuck right in.
Do you need a speaker for your next conference? Recommend Timbo to your event organiser. Or better still, book him. Tim Reid, that's reid.com.au.
So Harry Campbell, the rideshare guy, coming up very shortly. But my book's here. Yeah, it's here. The Boomerang Effect. Oh, man. So excited. You can buy it now. It's selling like hotcakes. I'm happy about that. Conference organisers are buying it. You can buy it on my website, smallbusinessbigmarketing.com. You'll see a photo of the yellow cover. But here's the thing. The Boomerang Effect is a very simple marketing concept that I've come up with, which says, hey, listen, the more you put into your marketing, it will return multiples. Yeah? And helpful marketing is the way to do it. And I explain exactly how that works. Lots of case studies of real-life businesses that are benefiting from sharing their knowledge and seeing it return in multiples in terms of inquiry, more business, more money. That's what the Boomerang Effect's all about. You can go over to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com and purchase a copy if you would like. Hey, big news for my speaking career. I hope you're interested. I'm excited by it, and it's a wonderful connection with small to medium businesses all over Australia. I will be emceeing the Telstra Business Awards for 2016. Now, these are very prestigious awards, if you didn't know already. They're in their 24th year, and what they do is they celebrate the achievements and entrepreneurial spirit of Australia's most brilliant small and medium-sized businesses. That's what we do on this show. So I'm excited to be able to meet all these wonderful business owners, the award winners, and be the MC on the night. It's in 8 cities throughout July, and it culminates in the National Awards in August. And I'm just so excited to be emceeing it. Past winners, businesses like MyOb, Blue Steel Boots, Bike Exchange, and even past guests and future guests have been winners of the Telstra Awards. Tony Nash of Booktopia, who's coming up in a couple of weeks' time. Tina Tower from Begin Bright. That was a great interview. I'll put a link in the show notes to that. But very excited to be emceeing these awards. You can check them out. Go over to telstrabusinessawards.com and you'll find out what they are all about. Maybe even enter them. Okay. Speaking of successful businesses, this fellow, Harry Campbell, the rideshare guy. So here is the thing. He's an Uber driver based in LA who now runs a blog and a podcast for Uber drivers. So quite interesting in the fact that he's kind of put his hand up and said, you know what, I'm going to be the key person of influence in my industry. 6 months ago, he took a rather large leap of faith. He quit his six-figure day job as I said earlier, an aerospace engineer at Boeing. Hey, I don't even know what they do, but gee, it sounds important. Yeah, so he quit to focus his entire energies full-time on this business he calls the Ride Share Guy. He says in the last 6 months since he quit, he's been able to grow his business by 500%, and he's glad to say that he makes more from blogging and Uber driving than he did as an engineer at Boeing. Last month, the site had nearly 500,000 page views over at therideshareguy.com. Maybe they just didn't pay a lot at Boeing. I don't know. Should have asked him. But he's making a lot more now. I would have imagined an aerospace engineer would make a decent coin. I think you're going to love this chat. Harry explains how he achieved meteoric success, the importance of creating helpful content, which he's very good at. I might have to include him in my next book, The Boomerang Effect Part 2. Oh, gosh. He talks about the excitement of having a side hustle. If you don't know what that is, stay tuned because it's an interesting way to earn a few extra coins. Plus, he shares where he thinks Uber's going. I started off by asking Harry to share his strangest story as an Uber driver.
All right. Well, actually, the first one that comes to mind is one that happened somewhat recently, a few months ago, but it was basically me at a stoplight with a guy in the back of my car, and before I knew it, he was sitting in the back seat naked, and then he got out of the car, walked around the car like it was, like it was super casual, and then just got back in and sat down, didn't say a word. And he was by himself, mind you, so it was a pretty strange situation. I think it had to be some type of dare or something like that. I kind of like joked about it later, but I didn't want to really dig into what had just happened, but it was definitely pretty weird.
That is a classic. That was actually me.
That was you?
So he hopped back in your car naked.
Yeah, we were just like pulled up at a red light, and he I didn't even really realize what he was doing. He just said be right back, and then he just walked around the car like it was nothing. And obviously this was at night. I mean, he'd probably been drinking, and I think his friends had dared him or something because it was a pretty short ride.
Yeah, right.
It was from one bar to this guy's house, and I think that it was probably some dare or something. He must have lost a bet or something like that. But it was just funny because he didn't warn me at all.
Yeah,
he just went out and did it, and then we kind of didn't really talk about it after.
As someone who speaks at a lot of conferences and who has a lot of friends who are speakers, we often say, there's a book we could write about the stories that we the things that happen to us on the road. And I imagine that you would be the same. You could get together with a bunch of other Uber drivers and it'd be quite an interesting book.
Oh, we could definitely, it's funny too, because obviously most rides nothing remotely close to that, that happens, right? Most rides go off without a hitch, are very normal, but it's that 1% or that 0.1%. And if you do enough rides, you're kind of bound to come up on something weird. And generally it's something weird, to be honest.
They're the reasons we keep coming back to do what we do, it keeps life interesting. Exactly. So tell me, how did the Rideshare Guy come about?
Definitely. So, it came about because I actually started driving for Uber and Lyft. So I was a full-time aerospace engineer working a day job 9 to 5, and I started driving for Uber and Lyft on the side, and pretty quickly realized that there was just this huge void of information. I had all these questions, and I was Googling.
Hold that thought. You're already going down a rabbit hole that I want to go down shortly, but you were not only, you're an aerospace engineer with Boeing, so a serious job. Why?
Serious job. Serious stuff.
Serious stuff. So almost answers the question. But why did you go, oh, well, I'm not busy enough. I'm not making enough money. I think I'll start driving Ubers.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely wasn't. I mean, the money was a big reason, but at the same time, I've just kind of always had that kind of entrepreneurial itch. But more so, it's just learning about new industries and trying new things. I mean, I didn't go out and become an Uber driver because I wanted to start a blog. I just heard that people were making money and it seemed fun and it seemed cool. And it was a pretty low risk investment on my part. So I just decided to go out and do it.
So tell me about your life as an aeronautical engineer at Boeing. Were you, are you a single guy? Your nights are free? You were looking for, still want to understand why.
It's a funny story because I actually am married and I was married at the time, but my wife is in medical school, so she's quite busy. And I often joke with my friends, like, I'm married, but I have a lot of free time, right? My wife doesn't.
Yeah, right.
You know, how a lot of couples will say, oh, you got to come do this with me. You got to come do that with me. It's generally like my wife, oh, I got to study, or, oh, I got to work. So for me, I've always had a little bit of extra free time, which, you know, we still get to spend plenty of time together. But at the same time, I have a little extra free time. And instead of kind of watching TV on the couch or just, you know, browsing online on Google or whatever and Facebook, I kind of try to find something to occupy my time that's kind of a value or, you know, a hobby that might make a couple bucks or something like that.
And had you driven cabs before, or had you done anything like this?
No, definitely not. I mean, I had driven before. I had driven a car before. And obviously here in the U.S., I mean, most people get their license around the age of 16. And so I got my license when I was 16 and had my first car, my grandma's old car. So I've been driving that around, but I was by no means a professional driver or, you know, probably not even the greatest driver on earth either. But it was something that you can pick up pretty quickly and pretty easily.
So you're at Boeing, you're doing whatever you do, you know, aeronautical engineer type stuff. You're driving Ubers at night.
Yeah.
What happens?
What happened from there, or what happened how I started the blog?
Yeah. Well, specifically, you say here, 6 months ago, I actually took a huge leap of faith and quit my day job as an aerospace engineer. So what enabled you to leave, I'm guessing, a pretty high-paying job, relatively secure, as secure as a job like that can be?
Definitely. Yeah, and I think that's definitely, I mean, I wasn't, you know, as an engineer, you're always well paid, but you're not exactly, you know, living the millionaire lifestyle. But it's secure and you're making good money enough to provide a comfortable living for your family. For me, it was really that I started to see that my blog was getting some traction. It was about a year. You know, I basically worked my day job and my blog, the rideshare guy, on the side for about a year on top of my day job. And so I was really building up a ton of traction and trying to get as much traffic to the site and, you know, figure all the monetization and back end stuff. And that's kind of when it really hit me that I could potentially leave my day job and do this full time.
All right. So let's rewind then. So you're driving Ubers, you're at Boeing, and then you start this blog. Why did you start the blog, and what's it all about?
Yeah. I mean, so basically, when I first got started as a driver, I had a lot of questions, right? Like any good student and anyone who wants to learn about a new industry, I went straight to Google. I went straight to see if there were forums or Reddit threads or anything like that where I could just learn from people who knew more than me, right? Who had been doing it for a while. And I couldn't find much. I couldn't find any blogs. I couldn't find any podcasts. I'm a big podcast listener. I'm always looking for new podcasts. That's actually how I found yours, probably in the iTunes store.
Thank you.
And, you know, I couldn't find any information. And for me, it just kind of clicked in my head that, hey, there's this huge opportunity to create information about what it's like to be a driver, to handle all of these policy issues like insurance and taxes. And then what really started to make my blog take off was when I started talking about how much money I was making. And Tim, if you haven't realized this by now, people care a lot about how much money they're making.
Yeah.
Right. And all of my articles were, and, you know, I had this engineering background, so I was making these pretty detailed spreadsheets that kind of calculated by the minute, you know, when I was sitting without a passenger, when I was sitting with a passenger, and just doing a lot of analysis and trying to figure out, all right, these are the times when I'm getting paid. How do I maximize those? And how do I minimize the times where I'm not getting paid? And people started to really like that. And that's kind of when I realized that, hey, I have a little something here. And so that's kind of when I started doing more work and really kind of covering all different aspects of the industry. So that's, you know, my site has evolved to this day, and now it does something a little different. But when I was first getting started, it was really just detailing my personal experience as a driver and laying out the facts, though, right? Providing pay statements, providing numbers, providing providing detailed analysis, like this is how much you're actually going to make, because I just did it for 6 hours on a Saturday night.
I love it. It's a great story and evolved to a great blog and business, which I want to dissect further. I am interested in when you made that leap. Well, here we go. Your boss at Boeing, you walk into his or her office and say, I'm leaving. It's Uber for me. None of this Boeing stuff. How was that meeting?
I mean, honestly, I'd say, I worked with a much older crowd. I would bet that about 90% of the people, when they found out that I was leaving, I think they probably believe that I left to go be an Uber driver.
Right.
Which is obviously
not the case.
Pretty far from the truth. I mean, I left to do my blog and, basically work as an online entrepreneur full time.
Yep.
And I think that when I told my boss that, he wasn't shocked or surprised, but he said, all right, well, I understand. And, if you want to come back, just let me know. And when he said that, I said, hey, at least I have a backup plan now if stuff hits the fan.
And clearly your wife, very supportive?
I mean, I would say, to be honest, it was surprising. I would say my family, my mom and my dad were very supportive right from the start. Nice. And my wife, she wasn't not supportive, but she was just worried. I mean, kind of natural. She had all of the typical reactions that you might expect, right? You have this secure job, and I'm in school, not making any money. You're paying for our housing, for our food. And I think over time, as I kind of started to show that, hey, I'm getting a little traction on my site, I'm starting to make a little bit of money here and there. And, I've always been a very good saver. So we did, it wasn't like I went into this and left my full-time job without a backup plan, without savings, without investments. So I think that, I worked for six years full-time as an engineer, and I had a lot of side hustles along the way that brought in extra income. And so I think that we were we were doing very well financially at the time when I left. So it wasn't like a huge risk.
Tell me about the side hustles, because I know there's a lot of people listening who... I have this weird mix of listeners, and that's a terrible thing to say about my listeners, Harry. They're not weird, but you know what I mean. They know what I mean. There is
very
a mix
diverse.
of business owners and entrepreneurs who have made the leap, like you have, and then there's a whole lot of people stuck in cubicles who are wanting to make the leap. These little side hustles are interesting. What are we talking? Little eBay businesses here, or, the odd garage sale there?
I mean, honestly, I've really ranged the gamut, but one kind of common theme, and I'll share a few that were somewhat unique. I mean, one common theme that I found with all my side hustles is they were things that I was often passionate about, because I think a lot of people go into like side hustles or making money online, and that's the number one goal, right? It's just to make money or to just provide more income or whatever it is. And I think that there are a lot of opportunities for business and passion to align, and that's kind of always what I've looked for. I mean, when I was working for Boeing, before I started this blog, and when I was living down in San Diego, I actually was a big San Diego Chargers fan, which is the local football team. And I discovered that every year, I mean, I've been following them for like 5 or 10 years, and every year they would really poorly at the beginning of the season. Ticket prices would drop because no one wanted to go watch a team that sucked. And then at the end of the year, they would come on strong. And every year this was happening over and over. So my friends and I, we started buying tickets at the beginning of the year after they lost a few games. We would buy playoff tickets. We would buy everything. And then towards the end of the year, when they started doing well, we started reselling them for double and sometimes triple the price.
Love it. So you're a gambler.
It was... Yeah, I mean, it was funny because it worked every year. It worked year in and year out, and we kept doing it. At one season, I think I bought 40 or 50 tickets, and American football tickets are pretty expensive. They're usually $100 or more per seat.
Yeah, right.
And that's face value. When you resell them, obviously you can get double or triple for the big game. So I was doing stuff like that, and another one that's a little bit more traditional is I played volleyball in college, and when I got out of school, I got out of shape also and couldn't quite, I wasn't in nearly as good shape once I started working, but I started coaching volleyball on the side, and it filled that volleyball itch where I could still get to coach and have that competitive side, even though I was no longer really at the top of my game.
Yeah, right.
And I could still coach. And I mean, frankly, the income was pretty good. I made pretty good side income doing that on top of my day job. And honestly, I would have done it for free. It didn't feel like work at all.
Hey, listeners, I'm chatting with LA-based rideshare guy, Harry Campbell. Before I ask Harry how he increased his business by 500% in his first 6 months, here's a word from a couple of sponsors that want to help grow yours. This show is made possible by Key Person of Influence, which according to the Huffington Post is the world's leading brand accelerator program. Now, they've got some very cool one-day events coming up with some amazing speakers. So I asked head honcho Glenn Carlson to pick his favourite. His answer may well surprise you.
That's horrible, mate. I'm going to have to say, while there's Matthew, who's built, the third fastest growing company in Australia, sold it for tens of millions. Valerie is obviously one of the best content creators in Australia, talking about profile. Tim, his company's built over $1 billion worth of value in his clients. Andrew Griffiths, 12 best-selling books. But, mate, I'm the MC. I'm the one that brings it all together. So, despite all these amazing speakers that have got incredible tenure in their space, I'm gonna say my favourite's got to be me.
Oh, you gotta love a big cheese that backs himself. All jokes aside, do your business a favour and grab a $57 seat over at keypersonofinfluence.com/Timbo. Support for this show comes from Net Registry, a one-stop shop for getting your online marketing sorted. Verity Ma, their Chief Marketing Officer, recently told me this story of a very happy mechanic.
So one of my favourite stories of customers that I heard was a salesperson was talking to a mechanic, and he was talking about what sort of email he would like to have and what kind of hosting, whether he wants cloud or cPanel hosting. And the mechanic just said, look, I don't care, build my website, here's my phone number, make my phone ring and send me the bill. And that was the last we heard of him. He didn't provide us content. He didn't provide us any details about his business. We had his contact details. We wrote all the content and we just got his phone ringing and sent him the bill.
Net Registry, where happy mechanics go to grow their business online. Visit netregistry.com.au or give them a buzz on 1300 638 734. And tell them Timbo sent you. Now, Harry, you say you grew your business 500% in the 6 months since quitting. What do you put that down to?
Well, honestly, it's not just one thing. Unfortunately, I don't have like a get rich quick secret, or I can't really point to one thing, but I do think that there are a couple major factors that really helped me out along the way. And I think it's the first one, I think, is kind of one that isn't easy to track, and it's one that often goes unrecognized. And it sounds a little cheesy, to be honest, but it's really like building a community with my drivers. I mean, I made it very clear from the beginning. I put my face all over my site. I put my face on the Facebook page. I want people to associate with me, Harry, the rideshare guy, right? Not some company or not some entity, because I want to be able to provide the service to all these drivers. And frankly, a lot of drivers, when they email Uber or when they email Lyft for help, they weren't getting very good customer service, basically, right? Responses. They weren't getting their questions answered. And I mean, even to this day, my site had 500,000 page views last month. I still respond to each and every single email that I get personally. I don't have a virtual assistant or anything doing that. And it takes a lot of time. And I spend a lot of time doing email communication, social media, and things like that. But I think it establishes a really unique bond. Like, obviously, you have to have the content to back it up, right? And I think that I was doing a great job of producing all this high quality content, but obviously you want other people to share it and you want people to tell your friends about it. And so really what I call that is the word of mouth marketing, right? I was developing this relationship with all of my readers.
Word of mouth marketing.
Yeah. Well, where they felt, they all felt like they knew me, and they felt like, they were a part of the site and they were a part of this community. And I mean, I was getting emails from drivers during that 6 months where they were telling me, hey, I'm going out to the airport lots where a lot of Uber drivers hang out, and I'm printing out your articles, right? With a printer, right? I don't even own a printer anymore, I think. And they're passing them out to other drivers, and other drivers are saying, hey, I love your blog. I just listened to every podcast from the beginning, 1 to episode 45. And so it's really kind of like that word of mouth where I kind of established this relationship with a lot of drivers and worked hard at responding to every email that I got. And I think it's hard to track kind of a return on your investment on that side, but I know for a fact that that's helped me huge. That's helped me big time, right? I know a lot of drivers are telling other drivers about it. And frankly, it's been hard. I mean, it's hard to respond to all those emails, and it's hard to provide really good support. And it might not be scalable forever, but for now, it's still something that I even do to this day.
put some numbers around where you're at in terms of hours spent replying, number of emails, even any kind of dollar figures? Well, you publish your income. So where are you at with it all?
Yeah, definitely. So luckily, I use a cool app called Rescue Time.
Yeah.
And it tracks all of my time spent and syncs across my phone and my laptop. So basically, anytime I'm doing work, it knows.
Yeah.
And it kind of categorizes what I'm working on. So right now, as we're speaking, that was kind of my little delay. So I could pull it up and give you exact figures because I don't want to just make these up. And, so I can tell you, basically, I spend 47% of my time on communication and scheduling. And that's going to be things like email, voice calls, basically, right? So, phone calls are a lot. I don't really take phone calls with my readers, so that's a lot more with my team and with reporters and people like that. But emails, so you can kind of see that, over a quarter of my time, basically, I spend replying to emails. And that's 90% of those are driver emails, people that are emailing me with questions. And often, a lot of times, I'll just send them a link to an article I've done in the past that answers their question exactly, because that's how I craft a lot of my content, what people are asking for, what people are searching for. I go out and create content around that that's really good. So then when they ask me about it, I give them a quick 1 or 2 sentence email, but then I link to my article that explains exactly what they need.
Nothing more powerful than being able to do that, to be able to say, hey, listen, I've actually created a piece of helpful content that answers your question in detail. Here it is. I think you're a rock star.
No, what's been really surprising is that people will. I also get a couple other emails. People will say, "I know that you've covered this. I just can't find it." It's people who, they know that I've covered like every topic in the book, and so they come to me anytime they have a question, right? And then there's also the people who, frankly, like they'll ask a question that they can't find anywhere else, and then within one day, I send them back an email to an article or a podcast or a YouTube video, and it answers their question exactly because I spend a lot of time too creating the content or working with my team of writers to create the content. And so that not only are they getting the response they need, but the information they're getting is also really good too, which is probably the second, if not the first most important part.
So 47% responding and on phone calls and emails, rest of your time?
Mm-hmm. And then the rest of my time I spend, I spend about 10% of my time on social media. And the way that I operate is probably something that a lot of, I actually learned from my day job because believe it or not, I picked up a lot of efficiency tricks and hacks, I guess you would call them, from my day job. And, one thing that I really try to do is batch process. So that's a term that you're probably familiar with. And if your listeners aren't, it basically means, instead of replying to 10 emails over the course of a day, I sit down at the end of the day and do all 10 emails at once. Mm-hmm. Now, it'd be amazing if I only got 10 emails, but it's usually more like 100. I'll reply to 100 in the morning and 100 at night. But throughout the day, I don't really check my email, right? I'm not responding to emails throughout the day unless it's someone very important like you.
Thank you very much.
But, that's what I really try to do, especially with social media. And that's one area that people I know can get really easily sucked into.
Oh, yeah.
And it's hard to see a real return on your time because people don't always necessarily expect a reply on social media. And I don't reply to every comment or every tweet I get on social media, but I do go in at the beginning, sometimes middle and end of the day and spend 15 to 20 minutes during each period and just batch process all my Facebook, all my Facebook comments on my Facebook page and all of my Twitter interactions, basically.
Yeah, I love that. You are such an engineer. Hey, what do they say? You can take the engineer out of engineering, but not do something like that. But you're applying the disciplines that you learned in all that time in Boeing, which is fantastic, and we can learn so much from. Yeah, because otherwise we can be completely distracted, and time all of a sudden, where'd those 3 hours go?
Yeah, exactly. And the rest of my time is really primarily spent on, it's shifted a little bit. When I was first getting started, I didn't spend obviously nearly as much time on this stuff because that wasn't my core product. I think one mistake I see people make a lot is that they're not spending a majority of their time on their core product. My core product, especially at the beginning when I was trying to get traction, was creating content. So I was spending all of my time creating content and all of my time trying to get that content out there. So that's kind of, one thing that I've learned and also something that's evolved a little bit as my site has gotten bigger.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so in terms of revenue, can you share that?
Yeah, definitely. What would you like to know? I have quite a diverse sources of income at this point, and it's probably grown since I emailed you too.
Yeah, really? Because that's interesting in itself. So if you could put, like, what are your top, I'm sure there's some kind of 80-20 rule applies, but what's your top 3 to 5 sources of revenue and how much is it?
So I'd say, the number one source of income for me right now is basically advertising. So breaking that down a little further, it's lead generation for all of these companies that need drivers, right? So in the U.S., everyone's heard of Uber by now, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. In the U.S., we also have another company called Lyft. That's a $6 billion company. Wow. Uber is a $63 billion company. Lyft is right there, but smaller, but kind of in second place. And then there's also a couple food delivery services in the U.S. called Postmates and DoorDash that basically do on-demand food delivery from restaurants or fast food, McDonald's type places. And so I basically promote those services as like a typical affiliate or referral program. And all I do is really, I'll write articles about it or I'll have banner ads on my site, and it's just straight lead gen. When someone signs up using one of my links to become a driver for any of those services, I get paid anywhere from $50, $25 to a few $100s. So those can be quite lucrative, and those often make up, it varies a little, but I'd say pretty consistently about $5,000 to $10,000 a month in income. And then I've also really, one thing that when I was first starting my site, I didn't really focus on monetization. I took all the low-hanging fruits. If someone emailed me and said, hey, we want to give you money for this, I made it really easy for them to give me money. But I wasn't actively seeking, trying to convince people to give me money. I was focused on building my audience and growing my site. And in the past year, especially, I've sort of turned to the monetization. And now I'm targeting any advertisers who want to target on-demand workers or independent workers, right? All of these drivers have to go and file special taxes. They need to track their income and expenses. So I work with a lot of companies directly who do that. And, that could be anywhere in the $3,000 to $5,000 a month range from a multitude of partners. And then I also obviously have traditional like Google AdSense ads. And I actually even recently created a video training course about 6 months ago. So if anyone's interested in becoming a driver, I actually have a course that basically takes everything I've learned about the industry, everything I've written about, everything I've podcasted about, everything I've YouTube videoed about, and puts it into a pretty neat online kind of marketing type, course, a package that walks them through from just getting started to who should they drive for to even more advanced strategies, like, basically figuring out how to make the most money in the least amount of time type stuff. So I've definitely branched out, and tried to diversify my income and, really, I don't want to be dependent on one source, kind of like any good business owner.
The video course is a great play because you're getting 100% of sales there, whereas you are not getting 100% of sales necessarily in affiliates or advertising. Yep. But I love the diversification. And, you enter these things, I'm sure when you left Boeing and really leaned into the rideshare guy concept that you probably didn't realise that there'd be all these multitude of revenue streams that would happen. It happened in my business where, this podcast started to get traction, and then all of a sudden, I started a forum, I started speaking, and all these other revenue channels start, you get sponsors. I've got, it's wonderful. People, you can tell people this, but until they actually experience it themselves, they kind of look at you strangely.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of like touching on the point I made earlier, why it's so difficult. If you go into something with your sole intention to make money I didn't know how I was going to make money, to be honest, when I started this site. I just knew that, hey, if I gained enough of a following and built up enough traction, there were going to be monetization opportunities down the road. My core product right now is creating content, right? I'm doing 4 articles a week, and I have a team that's helping me now, but I do 4 articles a week, 2 YouTube videos a week, and 1 podcast every 2 weeks. But I don't get paid directly off of doing any of that content, right? It's all from working with advertisers. It's all from doing lead gen type opportunities. And so I think that's kind of where it's interesting, because there's been so many opportunities that have popped up. One that I didn't even mention that's been growing really rapidly lately is in the US, actually, drivers need a special endorsement to their insurance that costs about 5 to 10% more. And we actually created a resource that breaks it down by state, which companies you can go and get a quote with. And we started getting inquiries from individual agents who wanted to be listed on that page, and we started charging them anywhere from $100 to $200 or $300 a month. We've now got 15 or 16 agents signed up. I have a guy that manages the whole entire process, and I think it brings in $2,000 or $2,500 a month in revenue. And it's also a really great resource for drivers because they can go there, and these are agents that we've vetted, that we've talked to on the phone, that we've done all the Google search, and if we get any complaints, we immediately remove them. And so these are agents that you can, basically that all of my readers can trust. And that was one that I literally just stumbled upon because someone emailed me and said, we want to give you money to be on this page of your site. And I said, sure, let's make it happen.
Love that. You love when those opportunities come along. So,
Tim, like I said, if someone wants to give me money, I'm really good at saying yes. Okay.
Let's talk, I'm massive. All my listeners know that I'm all about creating helpful content in the form of podcasts or blogs or videos or whatever it is. Easier said than done, because all of a sudden the business owner listening goes, wow, that just seems mammoth. You seem to have a nice flow happening. Can you kind of just give us the bird's eye overview of your content creation strategy?
Yeah, definitely. And I think creating content is something that I honestly is my favorite part of the business. Right now, going forward, I'm focusing most of my time on creating content and running the business side of things. And because that's really what I enjoy most. So I've been really trying to focus on those two things and hire other people to do everything else that I don't like.
Great.
What I do as far as creating content, I think that one of the big things for me when I was first getting started was just to talk about things from firsthand experience. So when I was first getting started as a driver, I was reading all these articles about what it was like to be a driver, or, the few that I could find, because there weren't a lot of articles out there, and that's why I started my site. But the few that I could find, they just didn't seem to tell the whole story, right? They would say, hey, I've actually never been, the articles I was reading would say things like, oh, I went out and drove one night, or, I did this for a week and I didn't really enjoy it, or I really enjoyed it. And then there are also all these articles that were kind of overselling it and saying how amazing it was because they would get a referral bonus, a little kickback from signing up drivers, right? So it was just all of this content that wasn't very authentic and wasn't very detailed. So for me, I went out with the approach that, hey, I'm going to detail my experience from firsthand knowledge, right? And that was one of the things that was really important to me, that how am I going to be able to write about how to be a really good Uber driver if I'm not out there doing it myself all the time? And this stuff isn't rocket science, so it's not like you need to go out and do it 50 hours a week to be able to write about it. Which is a pity,
because you're a rocket scientist.
Yeah, exactly. I wish it was a little more complex. That might give me a leg up. But I think, people are getting really smart these days, right? That are reading content. They want content that they can't get elsewhere. And so that's, for me, now that there is more competition and there are other bloggers creating content about driving, I still look at it like, hey, I'm not, every article that I write, I'm not going to just give them like a bird's eye view. I'm going to go and say, not only, if I'm going to recommend an app, I'm going to say, hey, here's a cool app that I found, and here's how you can use it to make more money. Really, like what I call it is taking your content to the next level, because you have to almost have this really, I'm a very competitive person by nature, but I'm also very collaborative. Anyone who emails me to work with me, or, I always try to find ways to work with people. So I don't necessarily look at other bloggers as competition. I look at them as like a collaboration opportunity, because I know that, hey, if I work with this one guy, or if I work with 100 of these bloggers, there's no way that one blogger I work with is going to go out and work with these 100 other bloggers, right? Like, I'm willing to outwork them is kind of what I say.
Yeah, right.
And so, if I reach out to 100 bloggers about a link exchange or whatever it is, right, that individual might get a better deal, but if I do it 100 times, I know the other person individually isn't willing to do that. So that's kind of the same approach I take with my content, is really just taking it to the next level and basing it off firsthand experience, seeing what people are asking about. And, it's all, I'm always experimenting with this stuff.
Seeing what people are asking about. That's massive. It's, that just rolled off your tongue. But if we as business owners, and I say to my listeners, have your marketing radar on. As of right now, carry a notepad and pen, or use Evernote, the app Evernote, and listen to what people are asking you. Because if one person's asking you, generally speaking, there's probably 10, 20, 30 thinking it, right? So Go and create a piece of content that's better than all the other bits of content out there. Therein lies the challenge, that answers that question, and start to share it. Google will pick it up. because it's helpful, but start to share it, email it directly to people, and that's where the magic is.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny that you kind of brought that up, because at this point it's almost like second nature to me, right? Like I don't even think about it. I just say, oh yeah, if people are asking about it, obviously I'm going to write about it, right? But obviously, not everyone thinks about it that way. And I've actually never had a problem coming up with content.
No.
Because there are a lot of strategies, that people will use when they're first getting started. They Google and see, hey, what are people asking about? I want to answer those questions. If you have a following, you can see what people are emailing you about and create content around that. For me, I've actually never sat down at my computer and said, what am I going to write about today? I have about 100 ideas in Evernote just waiting to be written.
Yeah. Who hasn't? So, okay, so just in terms of just finishing that content creation discussion, you obviously got a team of writers. You're doing, basically what you do is you identify the topics that need answering, the questions that need answering. You either go ahead and record a podcast, so some audio, you do a video, or you set the task with one of your writers to go and write a blog post. Is that kind of how it works?
Yep. Generally, since I've never had a problem thinking up ideas, I'm always, whether I'm out, I get a lot of ideas when I'm out driving for Uber, so I still do that to come up with ideas, interacting. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of the things for me that obviously the blog is full-time for me now, but I think kind of, what made my blog so successful in the beginning was that I was a driver, right? So it's kind of like you got to still go out there and do it if you're going to be telling people how to do it.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, because you can't really lose that. I mean, that would, I don't think it'd damage you. Well, it would dent your credibility if, a year down the track, you've become so successful as the rideshare guy that you haven't got time to be the rideshare driver, and, the market will change and people will be talking, so you're great. You're keeping your kind of ear to the ground and continue to operate from experience.
Yeah, and I mean, I've actually sourced all of my writers from my reader base, and that's one thing that people always ask me, how do I find my writers? And I'm always looking for just interesting topics, right? It could be a comment, it could be a Facebook post, it could be a tweet, an email, anything that's interesting. And it's not necessarily people are pitching me stuff to write about, it's just they're telling me about something that's happening, and I say, hey, do you want to write a guest post? Here are my guidelines, and here are some samples of ones I've published in the past. And sometimes they're really good, and sometimes they really suck. But I'm able to because it's important to me to find, I kind of find drivers and turn them into writers. So, because then they can write from that firsthand experience. They know what it's like to be a driver. And that's one thing that I think has gone really well, because some of my authors today, some of my writers are some of my best, they're producing some of the best articles on the site, and I gotta stay on top of my game to make sure that they don't become better than me, right?
I love it. I want to take the discussion, Harry, just into other industries now, because what I like about what you've done is, your timing was wonderful, because obviously at the point when you started the Rideshare Guy, there wasn't anyone else who was offering the depth of content to Uber drivers and to Lyft drivers. So, first to market, and the rest is history. Now there's people coming up behind you. I think it's really interesting, the idea of no matter what you are, whether you're a vet or a plumber or an architect, there is I still think, certainly in Australia, and I'm sure it's no different in America or other countries, the opportunity to put your hand up and be the vet guy or the plumber guy, and start to be responsible for curating and creating the best quality content for other people in your industry to benefit from. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that, a lot of people look at industries and say, oh, there's already people doing it. I think there's always like a little bit of more room, right? I guess there's always room for more opportunity, right?
Mate, if we took the attitude that, oh, there's someone doing it, it's already being done, you wouldn't do anything.
Exactly. And I mean, I think that, one tip that I would give is that if you kind of, because I know from my experience of going out there and starting it, I got really lucky. I was one of the first ones to start doing this, so I had a big advantage there. But at the same time, I think there's almost just as much opportunity for someone to come in and start a very similar site. but with maybe a different angle, right? Maybe a more specific niche, right? So I think there's, it's kind of finding that right balance of the right niche and, having lower competition. Because if you go out right now and you're really passionate about personal finance and you try to start a personal finance blog, you're going to have a ton of competition. It's going to be really hard to stand out. But there are a couple examples of, I actually own a personal finance blog, so I can use this example. There are a couple blogs. One of my friends has a blog that focuses on doctors, right? So it's a personal finance blog for doctors. And he only started it a couple years ago, and I think he just published his income report. He's now making $200,000 or $300,000 a year off of this, probably what most people would have considered a very saturated niche, that there's no more opportunity left. But he was a doctor and he had all these personal finance issues. So he kind of decided to start a blog about it, right? And so it's really crazy to see that no matter what industry, you're passionate about, like obviously you can't just go and pick something randomly, but there are opportunities and you kind of just have to be constantly looking for them and constantly keeping your eye out for them. Because I think that, no matter how many other people are doing it, there's always a different angle that you can take. And if you go and try to do the exact same thing as someone, in that case, you might not be able to have a super high chance of success. But I think that there's always different spins and always different angles that you can take.
Absolutely. I think also there would be the benefit of actually having operated in that niche as well. It's already, I think that, if you're a doctor and then all of a sudden you start becoming, the doctor's doctor, that kind of makes sense versus someone who's never been a doctor is trying to create content for them. So, hey, is there a rideshare girl?
There isn't a rideshare girl, but that's a perfect example of probably someone who could come and start a site and maybe try to, work with me to, create that similar branding because, there's a lot of female rideshare drivers out there and there's probably some different issues that I haven't touched on that they probably could do a much better job than I do.
Well, now, one last thing about your marketing, Harry, which I think is very impressive, is that you say you've been featured in hundreds of media outlets in the past 12 months, including Business Insider, New York Times, Wired Magazine, CNET, the list goes on.
Yeah.
How?
So the approach that I took with the media was I wasn't an expert. I wasn't, someone who knew exactly what I was doing. But I think that I did a few unique things, and it really started from establishing a relationship with a lot of these reporters. Because as someone, I was working online, so I knew how many pitches I was getting every single day. I'm sure that you get a lot of pitches every day. And imagine how many pitches a reporter at a Forbes or at a New York Times gets every single day, right? In the hundreds or in the thousands. So for me, instead of, asking, just sending a blanket email out to 50 reporters and asking for, hey, I have this site about Uber. If you do a story, link to me, right? Instead of asking anything like that, it was really about developing a relationship with a lot of these people. And it wasn't anything super complicated, right? I started off interacting with a lot of reporters on Twitter. Reporters love Twitter. Every single reporter is on Twitter and they all are active. They all check it, right? They like seeing, I started featuring articles every week on my site and then having my virtual assistant go and tweet all of these authors and say, hey, your site was featured on the Rideshare Guide. Thanks for keeping us updated. Giving them a nice little ego boost, but also at the same time putting my name in their head. Hey, who's this rideshare guy that's featuring me and no one else is doing this, right? Emailing them just to say, hey, if you have any questions about the industry, here's my email, here's my cell phone, call me, text me. I'm never sleep. I'm available at all times of the day. If you ever have a question about a story, whether it's late breaking or anything like that, and really just putting myself out there as a really trusted resource. It helped a lot that I was a driver myself because a lot of these reporters needed that perspective from drivers, and they also needed someone who was somewhat credible. And putting a website behind your name or a blog or a podcast or anything like that gives you a little bit of legitimacy. And so it's really establishing a relationship with a lot of these reporters. I think a lot of people take the easy route and just reach out to reporters, send them an email, ask them to be featured or ask them to link to them and do things like that. And I kind of tried to take almost the exact opposite approach and target 10 or 20 reporters and spend a lot of time with them. And it ended up paying off. And, the first quote I ever got was in a Forbes article, and it kind of quickly snowballed from there. A lot of the reporters that I've been working with started using me and linking to me and a lot of their stories.
I think you're also lucky because Uber is every second article in the paper at the moment, or certainly is over here.
I mean, it definitely helped that Uber was, in the paper and in articles all the time. But I mean, even at the same time, right? I did little things like I put 6, if you go to my site today, as soon as you go to my site, you'll see in the upper right-hand corner, Forbes, New York Times, BuzzFeed, CNET, and then you can actually click on all of those images and be taken to the articles where I was featured or where I was quoted. And I think when reporters, let's say they're Googling information for stories and there are a lot of Uber stories being written, they find my site and they immediately see that, oh, New York Times has quoted this guy. He must be legit. I can reach out to him now. So it's really that snowball effect that even something like that's really small. I mean, who knows how many extra quotes that's gotten me.
Oh, I look forward to the Small Business Big Marketing Show's logo being there next week.
Definitely, yeah.
Hey, just to finish up, Harry, future of Uber in a couple of sentences?
I mean, honestly, I think that the future of Uber long term is probably not the way we think of it today. Today, we think of it as an app that transports people from point A to point B, but I see it as much more of a logistics network. And I think that from a driver's point of view, you could be having a package in your trunk, a burrito in your front seat, and a couple passengers in the back. I mean, it's going to be transporting all sorts of people, services, and goods on a pretty cool, logistics network, because I think kind of once they can really tie all these different aspects of logistics and travel together, really there's no stopping them.
Can we expect to see like Uber plumber, Uber lawnmower, Uber dentist?
I mean, I think that with some of these services, they're a little bit more of a niche. They're a little bit more of a luxury. I don't know that a dentist is ever going to come out to your house for the same price point, whereas you going to them. But I think that, with service, one of the companies that advertises with me is an Uber for mechanics. They actually, they'll come to your house and do oil changes and do brakes and things like that. And they don't have any of the overhead of a traditional shop. So it's actually cheaper for them to come to you. So there's definitely some niches and some industries where the Uber for X might start popping up in Australia or the US or all around the world.
Love it. Listeners, you can find Harry's blog, his podcast, his video course over at therideshareguy.com. And Harry, I do love my listeners to hit my guests up on Twitter. What's your Twitter ID?
Luckily, it's very easy, at the Rideshare Guy.
Very clever. Harry, thanks for sharing, mate. It's an interesting journey. I wish you all the luck in the future.
Awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. It was a blast to talk all about Uber and everything I'm doing.
Well, there you go, team. Harry Campbell, the Rideshare Guy. Hit him up on Twitter. Tell him you heard him on the show. And I now want to share my top 6, not 3, 6 attention grabbers from that little fireside chat with Harry. Thanks to the good folk at Key Person of Influence, whose one-day brand accelerator is not to be missed. Grab a seat over at keypersonofinfluence.com/Timbo. And these attention grabbers also brought to you by netregistry.com.au/Timbo for 3 exclusive packages to help get your business found online. Because remember, you are who Google says you are. Oh, yes, indeedly doodly. Righto, top 6 attention grabbers. Number 1, put your face in your marketing. That doesn't mean you have to front all of your marketing, but at least let people see that you are a real person. And if you have a team, put them there as well. And if you're not a real person, I don't know, get a stock shot. Attention grabber number 2, consider being the go-to person in your industry. I think this is a really interesting marketing strategy. If there's already one, think about what niche you could own within your industry, or just do it better than they're doing it. Never go, oh, that's already been done. If we took that attitude, we wouldn't start anything. So yeah, be a key person of influence in your industry. That's what the KPI program is excellent at. Attention grabber number 3, when creating helpful content, I love Harry's idea of talking about things from first-hand experience. And when you do it, be sure to tell your whole story and just do it better than everyone else. Put some personality into it. Remember last week's episode with Julie Cross about putting personality into your marketing, owning your space. Hey, it's not that hard. Attention grabber number 4, smash processes. I like that phrase Harry used. Do all your emails in one hit. Do all your social media in one hit. Make all your phone calls in one hit and make a game of it. Have fun with it. If you want to know how to do that, go back and listen to a chat I had with Real Estate Agent of the Year, James Tostovan. He makes 200 calls a week. He smashes process. I'll put a link in the show notes to that over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com/299. Attention grabber number 5, have a side hustle, one that you're passionate about. What a great way to generate more income beyond whatever you do during the day. It can be fun. Make it a hobby. It could be selling stuff on eBay. It could be podcasting on a topic you love and finding sponsors. I don't know. Side hustle. Interesting concept. Play with it. Attention grabber number 6. Oh, this one makes me laugh. Hit reporters up on Twitter. Hey? Last week's episode, you know when I got my nose out of joint? Not appearing in that newspaper article? Well, I hit that reporter up on Twitter. Told her I'd mentioned her in the episode. Haven't heard back yet. That's okay. She might smash process. She might do Twitter once a week. I don't know. But there's a lot of journos on Twitter, so consider that if you want to get some earned media coverage. Hey, they're my top 6 attention grabbers, thanks to Key Person of Influence and Net Registry. What was yours? I'd love to know. Head over to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com/299 and tell me. Dan Zarella of HubSpot once said, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction, plus a social media overreaction. Ain't that the truth, hey? Social media overreaction. Imagine if we talked the way we wrote on social media. It's all a bit hyped over in that social media world sometimes, isn't it? Anyway, you know my thoughts on that. Hey, I don't have a listener question this week, but I do want to encourage you to send me a question that I can answer and give your business some coverage on this show. Why wouldn't you want a bit of that? Then your business goes out to thousands of business owners all around the world. So thanks to everyone who has left a listener review on iTunes. But when you do, leave a marketing question as well by simply these simple 4 steps. Go to iTunes, search for Small Business Big Marketing, hit ratings and reviews, then hit the write a review button, leave your review, leave a marketing question. I will share it on an upcoming show. Little bit of coverage for your business and no downside. Gotta love that. Righto. What do you think, team? We wrap things up? We've got work to do. We have got marketing to create. We have got businesses to build. So let's get stuck into it. There is, however, plenty of marketing gold coming your way in the weeks ahead. Next week, we're joined by Tony Nash. He is the founder of Booktopia, Australia's largest online bookstore. They sell a book every 8 seconds. And he's a Telstra Business Award winner. Hey? That's good. Hey, don't forget to buy my book, The Boomerang Effect. Head over to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com. You'll find a link to buying it. Hey, big love to both Net Registry and Key Person of Influence for making this show possible. Be sure to use Net Registry if you need a website or to get yours found over at netregistry.com.au/Timbo. Grab a seat at the upcoming Key Person of Influence Brand Accelerator over at keypersonofinfluence.com/Timbo. I'll be going. I'm going to the Melbourne one. So I'd love to say hello to you if you are there. I'll be the tall bloke in the, don't know what colour shirt I'll wear. I'll wear a pink shirt? Don't know. I'm tall. Hey, thanks to audio landscaper himself, Daryl Delirious Misson, for levelling me out. And to music man Lockie Dolly, for whom I am eternally envious. I so wish I could play an instrument, or at least sing. You can check him out over at lockiedolly.com. If you need a speaker for an upcoming event, timreid, reid.com.au is where you'll find me. Until next week, my favourite motivated business owners, I'm Timbo Reid. Thanks for listening to the Small Business Big Marketing Show. May your marketing be the best marketing. Bye for now.